he contacted me. He said, $50 million, absolute steal for the entire island. This was 2007, getting into 2008. But he says, we got a little problem. I'm calling you about. I said, what is it? Sales are down. For some reason, sales aren't coming in at the level that we thought they would. Now, this is still during the boom, right? And sales are not coming in. Big problem. And he says, would you mind coming down and looking at this and tell me what you think? So I said, okay, I'll be glad to come down. And this was the sales case. On this island, he was selling $5 to $7 million. He was selling homes. Their dream was to sell the home on the lot, lowest price $5 million, highest price $7 million. Okay, 30-minute private helicopter ride from Fort Lauderdale. Delta had a direct flight, 10-minute boat ride to Private Island, eye distance of Harbor Island. I mean, they were going to sell, they had gotten up, they were going to sell $500 million worth of property. That's how many lots they had. Okay, some challenges. No model home, very little infrastructure. They were employing luxury marketing, which is a tough marketing strategy. They had a Jack Nicklaus golf course. They were going to put a golf course on the island. And so I was looking at this and going, very little infrastructure. I said, how do you get electricity here? So, well, we're going to run it over from Harbor Island. Harbor Island was, I don't know, a mile away. And I like, running underground cable to me, Chris, sounds like expensive. I mean, you put a shovel in the ocean, and you've got to spend $1 million just put a shovel in there. I said, that sounds expensive. But we're going to get $500 million. The infrastructure is going to cost $75 million. I said, okay. So they started advertising. This is where they were advertising. Kind of highfalutin magazines. They were out there advertising Royal Island. And this is the view. Obviously, it was very pretty. Now, as we flew in, they said, we're going to put you up at night in one of our hutches. And I thought, okay. They said, we hadn't built anything yet, so we built these small hutches to house our people. So I said, okay. I won these things. They said, well, we fly people in to buy a $5 to $7 million home. We made the hutch kind of nice. I walked in and thought it was, wow, look at this stuff. And this was, the roof was, you could take off, in case of a hurricane, you could take the roof off. It was a vinyl roof, kind of like a dome roof. So here it is. This is kind of like Gilligan's Island here. I'm like, I kind of like this. That's fishing. Then this is the entry point into the island. You can kind of see they got a little bit of a clubhouse going. The golf course with some problems. And so the question, I said, well, how many homes have you sold? 2. I said, you sold 2 homes. How many are you supposed to have sold by now? Well, we hope to have about 30 or 40 sold. Well, you're doing not real good. So what's the problem here? At that time, we got to put ourselves in the, money was easy. You could borrow the money on this. I mean, easy. The banks would have given you money on this. So he had plenty of, in fact, the 20% owner of this was Roger Staubach, Dallas Cowboys. I said, Chris, I would think Staubach would have more friends in Texas, could sell 50 homes to those guys. I mean, just his old buddies and everything. He says, they come out, but they're not buying. He says, Staubach has sent out all of his family and his friends, and they're not buying. That's a problem after you just paid $50 million to this island, plus all of this. So now go back to Jimmy Buffett. Let's go back to all of our materials here. You remember Buffett? You got to touch that customer the right way, just like Ligon Hutto. Don't go wide, go deep. Don't try to be all things, all people. So how do we solve this problem? How can we get sales here? And you know what? I'm going to go out and give you a hint. And I told him this next morning at breakfast, and I was not the favorite person at breakfast that morning. And I told him what I felt how they could sell here. You have seen the solution in this video, in this film here, on the answer to this problem. Now think about it. If I'm flying in from Manhattan, if I live in Manhattan, if I live in Dallas, Texas, are you going to impress me with a $5 to $7 million home on some island when I got all that? I got all that already. You can't touch me that way. I've already got all that. I've already got the fanciest home you can ever look at. So why am I going to buy something I already have? If you got too much of the opulence already. You're probably already thinking, the kids, these kids have got the disease of affluence. You go through all these issues. These are real live issues. I'm starting to touch some customers now because I'm starting to deal with some of their what they're facing every day. We never just get together as a family anymore and just have a good time. So what could I sell? What can I sell? I'm kind of selling what Buffett's selling, escapism, right? I could sell escapism. And, it was right there. I said, you know what? How much is your hutch? How much did it take to build that thing? And they said, well, it took about $500,000. It's pure redwood. I said, I'd build, here was the answer. We've kind of gone over here, but if I live in Manhattan, just being that close to the beach and feeling the sand between my toes, the kids can run out. Now, it's not exactly the outhouse either, This thing is not exactly, roughing it, but it makes the point. I said, why don't you sell these things? I said, you build that 500, you could get $2 million for it. You could put them all over the island, and baby boomers, what's your demographic? Our demographic is 47 years old. What do 47-year-olds remember? And what do they love? Camping, true. Gilligan's Island. The guys are still in love with Mary Ann. Because this is what sells. Nostalgia. Nostalgia. You know how they're bringing Florida back? You remember that Coppertone ad with the dog and the little girl? They're putting those back up because people look at them and they remember going down to Florida as a kid. I want to come back here. It's nostalgia. So if I can build some nostalgia here and touch that customer in their heart, then like Buffett does, they'll pay me 4 to 5 times this. My profit margin on this is much bigger and a lot less hassle than trying to build a castle on an island. And, they all had their own generators. I don't even have to run the infrastructure of them. They're all self-contained with electricity and everything you need right there. Well, I raised that issue that morning, and Chris, actually, he got so bad at me, he actually spit on me at breakfast. He didn't mean to, but he started telling me every reason, because, I was only he already spent $50 million plus another $60 million on what you see there. He's $110 million in the hole. And this is the business case. Putting all the alignment, escapism, in everything. So, any questions on the business case?
Did he do it?
Pardon me?
Did he do it?
Well, here's the answer. And Chris is a great entrepreneur. And he's done very well over there, and he's done great. But we make mistakes. He probably got so involved. He had a couple of big home runs. And usually as an entrepreneur, don't ever let an entrepreneur make a big decision after a major loss or a major win. We're emotionally basket cases at those times. And we're not very good at making those decisions after a big win or a big loss. So he made this decision after a couple of big wins. And he didn't like my suggestion at all. And he didn't do it. They went bankrupt. Now, that's nothing to do with, I mean, there's a lot of real estate companies that went that way, of course. Of course, the recession hit. But I got another phone call. Chris calls me. This is like a year ago, and said, look, we're taking out of bankruptcy. The investors have agreed. The creditors have agreed. We got everything worked out. And we are going to scale it down. You know, he says we have to. And I said, okay. He said, why don't you come back out and see it, and we're going to talk about scaling this baby back. So I said, well, you know, the fishing's good down there. I like it there. So I will go back. And I went back, and we got to breakfast again. I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't eat breakfast. We didn't have a lot of good breakfasts there. And we got to breakfast, and he says, oh, by the way, we're going to keep the Jack Nicklaus golf course, and the Montage is coming in here with a hotel. And we're going to sell these villas. He called it villas. We're going to sell these villas. And I go, you know what? That's not going to work. That's not going to work, Chris. The Jack Nicklaus golf course and the Montage, if you've ever been, Montage is above the Ritz level. I said, you're not going to totally touch your customers here. And anyway, you know, entrepreneurs are stubborn. He went ahead, and he's still in rough waters, still not making sales, because the customer's got to have absolute clarity. I understand this is Gilligan's Island. This is a high-end Gilligan's Island. I love it. You know, Gilligan didn't have a Jack Nicklaus golf course or a Montage hotel. So let's say he's getting there. Maybe they'll scale it back again. This is what I'm laying out here is a marketing strategy. Whether it's right or wrong, you've got to have a strategy and execute on that strategy. And it's got to be clear. So that is the Royal Island business case. Any questions? Yes.
Are there any opportunities for focus groups on the side? Do they do focus groups?
You know, I was essentially part of that. I mean, in a way, there is. He invited people. I don't think I'm going to get the third invitation back, although we're still good friends. But if there is any, I'll tell him to call you. I'll remember you.
But no, that was a serious question though. Doing focus groups, like why were people?
Oh, okay.
Why were people buying? Did he have a survey or any kind of questionnaire, or did they just fly out to their?
That's a really, you know, guys, I know it's getting late, but that's such a great question. I mean, it's such a great that we have to address. Sorry, I was about to go to break, but you landed a great question. What about focus? Why don't you just hire a focus group? Why can't we just do that? If we start building a company, why can't we just get a focus group, get them to come in and tell us? IBM did that with the personal computer. You can go through the list. You know what? Generally speaking, they just don't work. Customers are not paid to tell us what to do. We're paid to see what they need. Now, again, I'm sure there's some focus groups that have been great, can do a good job. Generally speaking, it's a vision of an entrepreneur and the shared values of their high-performance employees that changes the world. If you look at it, all the big companies, tell me a big company that hit the next big thing. Big companies spend a lot of money trying to figure out what the next big thing. You would think there would be no Google. Why wouldn't Microsoft just come up with a search engine? I mean, that was not it's a search engine. Microsoft, again, all the money, all the resources. Why is there a Google? You know, before Facebook, there was MySpace. It is usually always driven by a visionary entrepreneur. And when I go to business conferences, trade shows, you know, all the big companies have got the front row seats. That's not where the innovation is. The innovation is usually back there in the corner with a couple of engineers. So it just works out that way. I would imagine customers wouldn't have told you to build the hutches, but they may have. They may have. That one's a pretty obvious one. I can't claim too much credit for that one because that was pretty obvious.